This is Karen with NewClevelandRadio.net, and it's time for Hard Mojo with Melinda Smith. And, I'm going to do this on your behalf, Melinda, because 2 weeks in a row, we're doing your podcast, and typically it's every other week.
Right.
But life has been a real maze, not just for me, but for you as well. And so I want our listeners to understand that we're real, ordinary life people. Melinda works a full-time job, and there's a lot of stressors in the senior community.
Absolutely.
And I know that some of the work that I've done in the senior community, there are days sometimes I look at myself and go, oh, that could be me. Like, wow. And it can really make you start to ask questions all day long about who you are and where you're going. But I met this gentleman who's going to be your guest and who you're going to introduce in a minute. And I found him so interesting that at the end of my podcast with him, I invited him to be on as a regular once a month with me. And we talk about all different subjects. So I think you're going to really like him. And I think your listeners will as well. And I'm ready for you to introduce your guest.
So I don't want to mess up your last name. So it's Eric Teplitz?
Yes.
Look at me. I did it. It's good. It's all good. And you are a personal coach, correct?
Yes.
And I guess you have a website and a newsletter and all sorts of things that you put out there to help people. And tell us a little bit about yourself and how you ended up being a life coach and your journey to get there.
How many hours you got?
Well, we've only got a little bit of time, but we can always have you back because we've had guests on before multiple times.
Yeah, I just say that because, it's been a journey of a lot of twists and turns, as I imagine many people experience in their lives. And this isn't exactly what I set out to do. From a fairly young age, I was very much tunnel vision focused on being a musician and specifically being a singer-songwriter. And that was really the only thing that I wanted to do with my life when I was younger and let's say teens and 20s. And I really went after it. I really just went full throttle, all systems go. This is what I want and I'm going for it. And I had this belief that if I just worked hard enough and if I didn't give up, I would succeed at some point on some level. I wasn't deluded in the sense of like, I didn't feel like, I'm going to be, the next, I don't know, Elvis
Eric
Presley. I'm sorry?
I said Eric Carmen. He's local. And
Eric Carmen is local to you
singer.
guys? Yeah, sure. Yeah, and of course, Elvis Presley actually didn't write his own stuff. But the point being is that I didn't expect like, I'm just going to follow my dreams and I will, be world famous and have more money than God. And, did I fantasize about things like that? Sure. But I didn't have that expectation. But the expectation that I did have, I saw from just the response that I got from peers whenever I would perform. I knew first of all, how I felt about music. And it was such a deep love that I had for music in general and for performing and writing my own material and being able to express myself in that way. It just felt so natural and so right. And I got really good responses when I would perform. I would perform at any and every opportunity I had, informally or formally. So whether it was a coffee shop gig or whether it was in someone's dorm room, and I would spend hours and hours playing if anyone would listen. And it was just abundantly clear to me, this is what I want to do. And I felt like I'm good enough at it. I mean, there's always room for improvement, and I was eager to grow and get better. But I moved to Nashville after college to pursue this career in earnest and really, surround myself in a music community and immerse myself in a music scene and, see how I would fare. And so I played a lot of open mic nights and writers' nights and wrote songs and networked with other songwriters and musicians and played the game, as it were. And again, I felt like I know that any sort of creative career is a bit of a long shot for anyone. Just the odds are stacked against you, but I didn't care because it was the only thing I wanted to do. So it was a no-brainer for me. Like, of course I will do this. And basically I just pounded away and thought that by sheer will, I could at least get a career off the ground where I was eking out a living, supporting myself, doing the things that I loved to do, specifically writing my own songs, recording them, and performing for people. Even just myself, I was primarily just a solo performer, just me with an acoustic guitar. And I loved entertaining people with just my personality and my songs and a guitar. So I guess this is already not short, but the short-ish version is that despite an incredible amount of effort on my part over a period of years, I would say the cumulative toll of collective disappointments and the very minimal amount of, let's say, return on my investment, even though it's a terrible way of phrasing it. The results were really poor. I was putting forth so much effort and putting myself out there so wholeheartedly and in every way I could think of to do, creatively and otherwise. I took it upon myself to be my own manager and booking agent and even one-man record company. I mean, I couldn't have been more serious about the pursuit. And I never anticipated giving up and doing something else because it was the only thing I wanted to do. But what happened was I basically got blindsided by a pretty severe depression that just knocked me down hard, where I just had exhausted myself looking back. I mean, I had just given all that I had to give and I was depleted. And, you know, in a certain sense, I can look back and be proud of that because like I can look back and say, I gave this everything that I had. I had nothing left. I really gave it my all. And I think that that's true. And I do take a certain amount of pride in that, just knowing that I went for it. On the other hand, I did this at the expense of my well-being, my overall well-being. I was not a well person in my mid-20s, in the aftermath of kind of, you know, putting my heart out on the line and doing all this. It left me in a really bad place. And I don't know that that's necessarily something to be proud of, like that I did it till I could do it no more. And I was, you know, a raw emotional mess back at my parents' doorstep at the age of 25, after having been, you know, venturing out on my own for several years. And the thing though is that I don't think I could have learned this lesson any other way. I think I had to learn it that way. I had to go through that experience, and it was extremely painful to give up on this dream that was everything to me. It was so much of my own sense of worth and self-worth were tied up into this identity that I had become attached to, that I am a singer-songwriter. And there was a part of me that believed that unless I succeeded at this mission of mine, and I had my own definition, I suppose, of success. By success, what it meant to me was I was creating work that I was proud of. So and artistically successful, meaning I was creating the best work I was capable of. And I think I actually succeeded on that point. But in order for me to be a success, I also had to succeed commercially. And again, I don't necessarily mean, worldwide stardom and untold sums of money. For me, success would have been, I get to make a living doing this. So I was certainly willing to have more success than that commercially. I was not any kind of purist, or, I would have welcomed that. But because I had worked as hard as I possibly could and done everything I could think of to do to advance myself, and I still failed, it was like a shock to my system, because it was counter to everything that I had believed, I think, up to that point. I really believed I wasn't necessarily the most talented musician that ever walked the earth, but damn it, did I work hard, and I was good enough that I could succeed at it. I really believed that. Especially, you hear the people that make it onto the radio and you watch how the business works and you roll your eyes. You're like, oh my goodness. So many acts were manufactured. They weren't even necessarily musicians, but they had the right marketing behind them and the right money
right
and look. And, and
Mhm.
all that kind of stuff. And you see, now I do believe that if you're going to have a lasting career in any art form, I think you have to have some ability. You can't, I think that superficial things can only take you so far. I think if you're going to last at it, there has to be something there.
To be substance to
I think so.
the individual.
Maybe
I think we can look at history and see that, the music history. See the Milli Vanillis who come and go, right?
Sure. Yeah. And maybe there are freak exceptions now and then, but I think generally that's true. And so I really just thought I'm good enough that in combination with my relentless drive and ambition and how hard I was willing to work, that I would succeed. And so it was blindsiding to me to see this not come true, but equally blindsiding and upsetting, I would say, was noticing all of the talent around me. Again, this is in Nashville. Incredibly talented people. I mean, crazy talented. And if I had been a talent agent or an A&R person at a record label, if such things even exist anymore, I would have been like, oh my God, I'm signing all of these people. And it's a no-brainer. I mean, because I was a fan. I was a genuine fan of the acts that I admired and, respected. And in fact, I did not have a particularly competitive spirit. Like I didn't feel like it was me against everybody else. If I thought someone was great at what they did in whatever capacity, I was their biggest champion, to this day, that's still true. So when I looked around and also saw the incredible talent around me that was also not getting recognition and not getting opportunities and enduring the same types of rejection. And, I felt like I was in on all these little secrets that the rest of the world didn't yet know about. I thought that I guess there was a part of me that was a little naive and really believed that because if you were really, really good, like it was inevitable that you would succeed. And here was all this evidence to the contrary. And it was very painful and very frustrating and upsetting. So I went back home to my childhood home with my tail between my legs, accepting my mom's invitation to come back home. And she didn't use these words, but I would use the words, put Humpty Dumpty back together again, which is what I needed to do. I was a mess. And there's no other way to say it. And so, okay, so that's me in my mid-20s. And my journey from then to now, from there to here, has been so full of twists and turns that I never could have possibly anticipated. And I will just say this, that at this time in my life, I'm a much more deeply, I think, just well person. And I would say that I've reached a place of contentment and satisfaction and acceptance, and yet still have retained a lot of my enthusiasm for life and curiosity and sense of adventure and exploration. So I've progressed. I'd never succeeded the way I wanted to. It never happened. And I learned to be okay with that. And I also learned that my worth is not dependent upon some notion that I have about what makes me worthwhile. And also that there are many ways in which I can experience the things that I was seeking. I think I could experience them in other ways: a sense of personal growth, a sense of accomplishment, a sense of contribution, a sense of engagement with life, a sense of adventure, a sense of making good use of myself in the world. Like, these things can manifest in ways other than just the one very narrow vision that I had for myself.
Well, I think, I don't know how far apart we are in age, but I'm going to assume not
Well,
too
I'm
far.
82.
Then I need to talk to you. So I think we were brought up at a time where we were told if you are good at something, you focus on it, you're going to be successful. And we believe that. I mean, we always believed that we would be able to accomplish any goal. And then we find that life may have another plan for us. And it sounds to me like that's exactly what happened to you. You gave it your all, which I commend, by the way, because I think that's important. I do the same thing with everything I've done. If I focus on it and I plan it, I'm going to go for it 100%. And you're right, it's exhausting. And at the end of the day, you're like, oh, I can't believe that didn't work out. But each time that's happened, it's pushed me in a different direction where I find something else. So I think it's a matter of once you healed and Humpty Dumpty went back together again, you could then look forward and say, oh, well, maybe this is the direction I need to go. Because from what I've read about you, you are very motivational. You help a lot of people. So music is healing. Music helps people. And you gave of yourself in your music, but you're doing the same thing, just in a little different approach. At least that's what it seems like to me.
Yeah. Also, you mentioned healing, and wow, healing is not a linear process, not in my experience. It circles back and around in various repeats. Sometimes it doesn't feel like you've healed, or it's hard to feel a sense of progress sometimes. But I think that through lots of different explorations, it took me, I really just want to say, it took me a long time to accept a lot of things. It took me a long time just to accept that I didn't want to pursue this anymore. That alone, like to be able.
Don't you think that was a good thing that it took you a long time? Because sometimes we just wake up one morning and say, you know what, this isn't going anywhere. I'm done. And I've seen so many people do that. And it's like, you know, did you give yourself a chance to figure it out? Why isn't it going the way you want it to? What else can you do? And yes, you said you were broken, and I know I can relate to that. And I think you can as well, Melinda, that, you know, your life you have a plan for your life. You're really excited about it. And then you realize in the back of your head, you know, I'm really not going where I want to go. And so how much longer can I do this? And that's when I think we fall apart and break. But I think if we make that decision overnight, and I saw my son do that a couple of years ago. He just woke up one day and he said, I'm never going to perform anymore. I'm never going to write another song anymore. You know, music is not part of my life. And yet 2 years ago, unbeknownst to most of us, he started writing. He started doing whatever he could. And now he's in upstate New York creating an EP. So, you know, I don't believe in ever saying never.
Yeah.
But I also believe in saying, hey, don't make that decision without a lot of thought. And I think that's what you did. You needed to.
You know, things take as long as they take, and they don't follow a timeline that we insist they do or expect they do or what have you. They just take as long as they take. I have since, you know, developed different ways of looking at this whole experience and different ways of looking at life in general. So it has shaped me for sure. And I believe that the language that I use now is that even though there are things that happen to us that we would never choose ever, we would never say, oh, this please, let me order some of that emotional pain, waiter, you know, we would never do that. So while there are things that happen to us that we would never choose, I do believe that everything that happens to us, we can use in some way. We can extract something valuable from it. I'm not saying that it's you have to figure out how to do that. Like, it's not necessarily obvious, and it's not necessarily going to happen overnight. It might take 20 years. But I do believe that you can choose to use your life experiences, however painful, to serve some productive purpose in some way. And that when you do that, it's very empowering.
This is how we got here today. I was a fitness coach, really into that, helping people. I've had many careers in my life, but that was the one that I was in when I found out I had breast cancer. So I had separated after 20 years, had 2 kids in school, found out I had breast cancer. And I was already doing motivational videos for exercise and nutrition. And I just switched it like that to getting through this journey. Because if I had to go through this and the pain and the questioning of life and why did this happen to me type thing, then I was going to help somebody else. So I switched to videos talking about my journey through cancer, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything. Made jokes out of some of the things, because what else are you going to do? You can sit and cry, or you can choose to laugh. And laughter is good medicine, right? And so that's how Karen found me. Somehow we ended up connecting on social media, and she's watching these videos and she's like, you need to do a podcast. And I'm like, I'm a little girl from Cleveland, Ohio. Who's going to listen to me? And she said, somebody will. They will. You'll make a difference. So after about a year of her pushing me, and it did take that long to prod me, I said, okay, let's try this. And I think it's been a great decision. And I hope through my journey and through the journey of others, which is why you're here today, no matter what it is, whether it's a health issue, whether it's a business issue, a personal issue, that you get something, you help somebody, and that makes it not necessarily something I'd want to go through, as you said, but it led me here. So if I can help one person today, one person that was watching me before, one person that watches this now, that's my goal. I feel I have a success because I can do that. I can give somebody that 1 minute in time where they go, somebody else has been through that. And look how they came through the other side. And it may not be the same way. No 2 people are alike. They don't handle everything the same way. Their response isn't the same. But if they can get one little nugget that helps them get through today, that's all that matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like, there were a lot of ways I did a number on myself, as I transitioned, if you want to say, from, broken person or severely hurting person to, more functional person to eventually thriving person. There were a lot of ways in which, and I think a lot of us do this to ourselves. We're our own worst enemy, and we judge ourselves with a harshness that we would never even consider
someone else.
Yeah, we would just never even. So it's interesting. I had a point I was going to make with, so one of the ways in which I judged,
82.
one of the ways in which I judged myself mercilessly was, here I was really devastated over the loss of this dream. Okay. And there was a voice in my head, a part of me that said, what is your problem? Like, really, what happened to you that was so bad? Nothing. You brought this all on yourself. No one asked you to pursue this. No one asked you to submit yourself, to these particular slings and arrows. This was your choice. You did it completely voluntarily. You're a big baby. What's the problem? It's not like anything serious happened. You didn't have cancer. You didn't lose a loved one, and so there was a voice in there that was extremely judgmental of my own pain. Like, by the way, that wasn't helpful, just for the record.
No, you had a loss. You still had a loss of a piece of you.
Right.
So it's okay to grieve that loss. Even, and but we're not, again, a generational thing. We were not taught to do that. Pick up yourself by your bootstraps and move on.
Yeah. Right? And again, it was, I think part of that voice was coming from a place that maybe was trying to help, in the sense that, like, have some perspective. Your life isn't over. But even still, even if I were somehow able to manage perspective that was beyond my emotional capacity at the time, at that age, it's still, you have to honor your feelings, and you have to grieve your losses. If it matters to you, it's a loss, you know? And so it can take a while to learn, just to learn to be kind to yourself and learn to have compassion for yourself, learn to allow yourself to have the feelings that you have, learn to be your own friend, be your own best friend. This is deep stuff, like it, you know, and for me, it was not at all, it was not a quick process by any means, and it was not straightforward. And it was not like one day I woke up and, oh, okay, now I know what to do. No, it was years and years and years and years of trying to find my way and not knowing, but still living my life as best I could all along the way, even without it, even without having it figured out. And there's one thing I just want to share on this thread that I'm on, which is that I remember when I turned 30, I'm about to turn 50, so 20 years ago already. When I was right around the time I turned 30, I felt like I was in a already much better place 5 years later, much better place. I was in Los Angeles, much better place. I was also in a much better place, you know, in psychologically, emotionally. And I still had two very, very big, powerful desires of things that I wanted in my life that were missing. I was grateful for all the things that I had, and I had a lot of great things going on. I had a lot of interests. I had friends. I had my health. You know, I was doing well, but there were two, in my mind, big things missing. Number one was a career, and not just any career, but what I really mean, even scratch the word career, work that I loved, work that I genuinely loved, where I felt like I could be me at my best and get paid for it. So be able to sustain myself. Didn't have to be, I wasn't greedy. I didn't need a lot. I don't have a lavish lifestyle or, you know, great material needs. I have some, but I just wanted to be able to support myself doing work that I believed in, that I loved, that I felt I was good at, and could genuinely make a contribution through. That was number one. And then number two, the other big thing that was missing was a relationship. Again, not just any relationship, but a really compatible, loving relationship in which we could support each other and mutually thrive, mutually be better for having the relationship than either of us would have been on our own. So I wanted a very specific kind of relationship. And those were the two big things that I wanted still. So at around the age of 30, I kind of just did the math, okay? And I thought, well, I don't know how long I'm going to live for. None of us knows that. But there are three ways I can see this the rest of my life playing out in regard to these two big dreams. So one way it could play out is I'll get one of these things and not the other, right? Maybe I'll find the relationship, but never get the work that I love. Maybe I'll find the work that I love, but never find the relationship. That's one possibility. Another possibility is maybe I will hit the jackpot. Maybe I will get lucky. Maybe I will find the loving, lasting, sustaining, wonderful relationship that I seek and seek to be a part of, by the way. Relationship is not just something you get, it's something you do. And maybe I'll be lucky enough to get both that and somehow find work that I love and people will pay me to do. And how about that? Like, that's another possibility. Possibility number three, despite my best efforts, and I will always put in the effort, that much I can promise you, it's possible that for whatever reason, it's not going to be in the cards through no fault of my own. Maybe I'll never find the relationship I'm looking for. Maybe I'll never find the work that I'm looking for. So I just looked at it very logically in that sense. These are the three ways the rest of my life might play out. And I just made the decision, you know what? It's my nature to pursue what I want and to go after what I, desire, and to do the things that I love and that that I'm drawn to. Like, that's me. I'm going to do that no matter what. And so I'm going to do everything in my power to try to manifest those things in my life, the relationship and the satisfying work. But I'm aware that it's not completely up to me. And so I just decided that whatever happens, I'm going to continue pursuing those things, but I'm going to live my life and live it as fully and well as possible, regardless. Whatever happens, whether I achieve one or both or none of those things, I'm going to do the best job I can living my life as fully as possible. And I certainly still hope for those things and will try for those things. But I just reached this point of, I guess, decision making, like that this is how I'm going to conduct myself. And there was something liberating about that, because I was still assuming responsibility for that which I had control over or have control over. But I was acknowledging the fact, unlike my younger self, I think, I was acknowledging the fact that, you know what, it's just not all up to me. It's just not. It's, I don't know if it's the ego, but it's delusional to think that that it's all up to you. So anyway, I think that from the time that I came to that awareness and realization and made that decision, that things improved. A few years later, I met Samantha, who is my wife and the love of my life, and we've been together. So we were together. We got married on the 7th anniversary of the day that we met. So we were together for 7 years, and then have been married for, this year will be our 10th anniversary of marriage. So we've been together 16 plus years. This year it'll be 17 total. And it is, how about that? Like, that happened. And it's, we're such wonderful partners for each other. That happens. That can happen. Mm-hmm. You can't make it happen. You can do things to facilitate it and to increase your chances, but you ultimately, there is luck involved. That's part of it, Right. Anyway, so that, and then more recently, the coaching is a more recent thing. I have gone in so many different directions with trying to find my way, work in the world of work, and trying to come up with a solution where I could do work that was both meaningful and satisfying to me and actually make money. Because for most of my life, it was a choice. You get to choose one or the other. And that's how it felt. I can either make money and be able to pay my bills, or I can do things that I love. But the two rarely, if ever, would overlap and intersect. So for a long time, what I did was I just worked jobs that I disliked to hated, and somewhere in that range, and then would pursue my passion projects outside of work. And man, did I put forth efforts in that regard. And the hope was that eventually something's going to give, right? Something's going to bleed through. And because I'm doing all these things that I'm passionate about, it's going to lead to something at some point. It never did. Basically never did. And I was exasperated, because again, I was trying to make it happen. Coaching, I think it had occurred to me for a long time, but I had never really acted on it for various reasons. And I guess things for me coalesced with the pandemic. I know I'm talking a lot, so if you want to interject at some point, but I sometimes I do my best thinking by talking, so I'm talking through this. This is not scripted, but it was during the pandemic that the funny thing is that in February of 2020, weeks before the world changed, right? I was this close to quitting my job, like this close. Like, I'm done with this. I'm caring. Get rid of this job. And I was like ready to quit, and I didn't have a plan. I didn't have something else I was going to do. I get to this point, and this happens. This is a recurring theme for me. So my wife knew what she was getting into when she married me. Anyway, so I was like at that point of like, oh boy, I could imagine her going, it could be any day now. Like it's going to happen. For whatever reason, I cannot explain it. I did not quit the job. And I was so grateful. I was so grateful when COVID hit. And especially those early days were pretty frightening. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, oh my God, I am so grateful to have a job. And my employer was, from the get-go, immediately accommodating and made working from home, very easy to do, and encouraged it. And it was over, we were all working from home, and it went very seamlessly for my job. And so, so I had this security in a very insecure situation of this job. And it's so interesting how your entire mindset towards something can change just like that. This is something that fascinates me about human beings, that your entire perspective on the same thing can shift overnight, literally.
Absolutely.
I've seen it happen, and I've observed it happening. And it's just the fact that it can happen to me is incredible. So I went from being sick of my job to being so grateful to have it, so genuinely grateful to have it. And I worked from home and kept the job for another year or so. And interestingly, the only juice that I got out of the job was on site. It was the people. I liked the people a lot. It was a great community in my workplace. There were musical opportunities. A lot of people I worked with happened to be musicians, and there were opportunities for us to get together and play and rehearse and put on shows for the staff on a quarterly basis. Who gets that at a office job? And I genuinely really appreciated the people there and developed friendships with them to varying degrees. And that was what was stimulating for me. The work was just what I did to allow them. It was what I did as my reason for them letting me be there, and it paid the bills. So when I'm working from home, all of the things that were feeding me outside of the paycheck, that were feeding me on a soul level, were gone, were stripped away. And I was just left with the meaningless job duties, which again, initially I was grateful for. But after a year of that, I decided, I am now ready. And I have left jobs in my life with, in every way you can, pretty much, like with a plan, without a plan, with sort of a plan, with savings, with no well, I guess, have I left jobs with no savings? Probably, I'm sure I have. But I had some savings, and the first year of COVID, I didn't go anywhere. I didn't spend any money. So I, was able to save a decent amount, and I had a cushion, and I just felt that I have to do this. Like the best investment I can make, the best way I can put my money to use is to invest in myself and to give myself the gift of the time and space to figure out what I really want to do. Because what I should back up and just say that I was trying to be responsible, and I was trying to do the quote responsible thing. The responsible thing is you don't quit your job. What you do, young man, is you try things, you work on things on the side, and then, create a side hustle, as it were, and see if you are able to make any progress and get some leverage. And if you can get to a point where it looks like it can be something that can earn you money, okay, then consider maybe transitioning. And I did try to do that. I really did. And for me, it didn't work at all. It just didn't work. I could not make consistent this is just for me in that particular context. I could not make, like, I was working on a book, and let's say I was, on a work day, I had very little left in me at the end of the workday. So I had to kind of work on it on the weekends, and I'd be working on it. And this is assuming, by the way, assuming that there's nothing else I want to do on the weekends. Well, I have a lot of interest. There's lots of things I want to do. But if I was able to get myself to work on the book, then it would be back to Monday, back to the work week. And I would not be able to maintain my connection to the book. And then when the next weekend rolled around, if I was willing and able and had the energy for it to return to it, I would have to sort of start over again. So I didn't feel like I was making any real headway. I didn't feel this sense of progress and momentum. And also, because my bills were being paid by my job, there was no incentive. I didn't need to do something else that might be money making. And so I would much rather go hiking or do something else, something to feed myself that's going to restore me and prepare me for the next work week. So I felt like it was this vicious cycle, this treadmill I couldn't get off of. And I just decided, after a conversation with my wife and getting her blessing, I'm done. I'm leaving. And I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I'm going to, I know that my savings can last me a certain amount of time, and I'm going to figure this out somehow. All I had,
A leap of faith.
yeah, it was a leap of faith. And I had the idea of coaching, but it wasn't fleshed out. And the book, as it turns out, which was this burdensome thing that was really difficult to write, ended up becoming a course instead. And I think I may have told you the story, Karen. I can't remember about that, how that came about. But essentially, I had this very unwieldy Word document that started off as this book. And anytime I had things that I wanted to put in, I would just add to this. But it was very incoherent and all over the place. And it was a mess to try to wade through and organize and make sense of. And I remember one particular day working on this book, I had an anecdote that I wanted to include to introduce a certain topic. And I labored over it and spent hours just trying to craft the perfect paragraph so I could convey exactly the story I wanted. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm spending all this time. If I were just speaking aloud, if I were telling someone this story, at the kitchen table or something, it would take me 3 minutes and it would be done. And it would I would probably leave more of an impression because I would be speaking it and using my full, using my body language, my expression, all the stuff, not just the words having to do all the work. So I thought, sort of as a lark, well, let me try recording myself telling the story and see if it works. And that was the kind of the shift that pivoted me to, this is not a book, this is a course, and I'm going to write it by speaking. Just like I said earlier, I kind of sometimes get my thoughts together through talking. Mm-hmm. It's a different neural connections there. So I created this course called Opening to Greater Possibilities. It's a subject near and dear to my heart. And it is based on basically all of my life experience to date and figuring out what are the ways in which I played a part in whenever something in my life opened up and whenever I expanded myself in some way. What role did I play? What things did I do to help facilitate that? I'm not going to take all the credit and say, oh, I orchestrated this, no, but I had to be open to things and I had to try things and I had to experiment and explore and I had to adopt certain mindsets when I did so. And so all of these things were incorporated and became this course. And I thought this course also works really well in conjunction with coaching, because the course itself is really a form of coaching. It's just pre-recorded and there are exercises for the person to work through. But I just decided that, people had told me over the years that the coaching would be a potentially good fit for me. And I had various reservations because other things were potentially good fits for me. And when I tried them, proved not to be, or at least not the way in which I went about them. So coaching feels like a really natural fit for me in a lot of ways because it makes it's a way in which I can make use of myself in an extremely satisfying way. It's very creative. I never know when I'm coaching someone what I'm going to draw upon from my own experience, from the hundreds and hundreds of books I've read, from whatever, I never know. And it's a meeting. I'm meeting the person where they are and we're communicating, and I'm trying to figure out ways in which to draw their own resourcefulness out of them and their own ideas out of them. And I'll make suggestions. I'm very active in that sense. I don't just say, tell me what you think. It's very collaborative.
Well, isn't that what writing and music was for you anyway? It was very creative. It sounds to me like the pieces and parts of you that was the music creator, you've just switched them and found them here because you're doing the same thing.
A lot of the same things. I rarely pick up the guitar when I'm coaching. I rarely sing. I rarely sing to a client, but hey, it's not beyond, I wouldn't say never.
But the words and the message that you have written, you're doing that. You're sharing that now.
Yeah. And also here's one other thing I want to say. Sorry to interrupt, Karen. One other thing I wanted to say is just that I have also been on the receiving end for so many years going to coaches, therapists, counselors, career coaches, career counselors, because I was dealing with so much stuff for so long. And being on the receiving end of all of that, I, for myself, kind of assessed what's actually helpful and what's not. And one of the interesting things in my personal experience that I learned and found was that the alphabet soup that appears next to someone's name, which is all their, degrees and credentials and I'm not saying that that's bad to have. I'm not saying you shouldn't seek help from someone that has those things. But what I am saying is that in my experience, those were completely irrelevant to whether or not the person was the least bit helpful to me. And that was an interesting revelation. Oh, you know what? Like, if I want to do this kind of work, coaching is not therapy. It does not require a license. It doesn't have a lot of oversight. It's not, managed by an overseeing board. Literally anyone can hang up a shingle and call themselves a coach. It doesn't mean they're going to be good at it. But I just found that was liberating for me to know that I feel I have a lot I can offer people. And I know, again, from personal experience, some of the people that have been most helpful to me had no quote qualifications in the traditional sense. They were qualified in their emotional intelligence and in their life experience and in their compassion. And you know what? Here's the secret. I'm going to give away the secret on your show to what makes for great coaching. It's so obvious and yet so often missing. And it comes very easily to me. You know what it is? Caring, actually giving a what about the person and about their situation. It sounds so obvious and basic, and you would think it would be like you would think that it would be understood that of course you have to care. But getting and making the other person feel that that you care, that you're vested in their journey, and that you really genuinely want to do what you can to help them.
I will tell you, I have a psychology background, and counseling, they teach you not to get involved. So you listen and you nod and you may give them whatever you give them. They teach you not to really be involved with your client.
It's difficult. That is difficult.
It's difficult to do.
There's a place for boundaries. I'm not saying there's not.
Yeah, but I mean, it's not that you don't care. It's hard to explain, but so for you, and I'm going to relate it back to music because that's where you came from. This is your song. This is what you're sharing. You're sharing that piece of you, the caring piece of you, to help someone else, because everybody's view. And so some people were helpful to you, some were not, right? Some music appeals to some people, some music does not.
True.
So it's kind of that same format. You have just found a way to share your internal song to help people. I mean, that's my assessment. I know it probably sounds a little.
Yeah, no, I think that's well said.
But I think many of us are doing that today because our world has changed and our world has taught us some of the things that I grew up with. If you went to school to become a teacher, then you're going to be a teacher and that's all you're going to be. And, hey, it might have been a great career early on, but maybe it's not for you now. Okay. I know my career has changed numerous times, and I've been teasing my husband over the past weekend, I'm thinking about a new career change. And he looked at me and said, no. And I said, yes. And when I explained it to him, he said, oh, that's sort of what you're doing. And so what my new career change is, because I've been working with so many coaches, is through our podcast, when people comment what they're looking for, I want to help them find those coaches, show them how to research it, understand what a coach is all about. I mean, Melinda, you did it for years, okay? But in some ways, you're still doing it in your job now, because you're walking people through the changes they have to go through.
Oh, in my day job?
Yeah.
You mean? Yeah. I mean, ultimately, my original, by the way, I'm a singer, dancer person too. So I totally understand what you're saying. And I found a way during COVID. I was performing with a group. It was called, it was an adult stage crafters glee, right? So we danced and we would sing, and they all tended to be older people. Well, when COVID hit, we couldn't perform. So my group in the senior community, we go out once a week. We danced in the snow and the rain, and for seniors and their workers outside. It did a lot of things. It helped me continue what I love to do, because that's important to me. And it was a way for me to market and network within the community during COVID, because that was the only approach. It's the only way we could do it. But the giving back of it is amazing. We still do it now every week, because it makes us feel as good as it does helping the residents. But my original career wanted to be a doctor. Back when I started school, first of all, I was the very first in my family to go to college. And second, that's just not what girls did, right? They went to school to find a husband and move on in their life. Maybe they were a teacher or something. So my way of fulfilling that has been always to help people in some way. I've worked in the medical field. Even though I've done a lot of marketing, sales, I'm always doing something that I feel benefits the person, helps them. And if I
you can
do
be
that,
more of a spiritual doctor.
yeah, I'm fulfilling that piece of me that I always wanted to be.
Yeah.
So this is my way of doing that.
Yeah, I think that our impulses can manifest in lots of unexpected contexts. And, for instance, like you may try to be a teacher. That was one of the career paths I explored, and it was dead end, because teaching, at least in the traditional sense, in a public school classroom, I kind of knew wasn't going to be my gig, wasn't going to be for me. But do I still teach in the work that I do now, and
absolutely,
through writing and through coaching? Of course, and so it's this sort of narrowly defining things that can get us into trouble. Certain things you do and should be licensed and educated and trained for. I'm not trying to discount that. I'm just saying that it's just an observation of mine that caring is such a fundamental thing, and it's a base. It's just a foundation. I'm not saying that's the only aspect of the gig is caring, but without that, everything else is meaningless. You have to build on that foundation of caring. If you show and you demonstrate to someone that you genuinely care about them, then they're going to trust you, and they're going to be much more, you're taking them seriously. So you know what that does? That allows them to take themselves seriously, and thoughts that they had that they may never have otherwise, like allowed themselves to entertain, suddenly come up and come out. And you're just, all you're doing is you're just providing a space, a supportive and encouraging space, allowing them to entertain these things, to take themselves seriously, and to care about their own lives. And you're demonstrating, just by demonstrating that you're interested and you're invested and you care. I'm just saying that alone can be so tremendously beneficial. I'm not saying that the other things aren't important. Sure, they are. But without that foundation, to me, I don't see how you're going to accomplish anything as a helping professional of any kind. I don't care how trained you are. You could be, a top neurosurgeon. That caring piece is still really damn important.
And I worked in plastic surgery for a while, so I was around doctors, but I am very particular about my doctors. Somebody could be, quote unquote, the best, but if you don't listen to me.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
If you don't listen to me, if you're not looking at the whole person, then you're not my doctor.
Right.
Exactly.
I'd rather find someone who, is good at what they do, but, is going to listen and care and participate in this health exchange, because that's what it is. I mean, they have to participate too. They can't just say, take a pill and move on. A lot of doctors do that now.
Yeah.
They're missing that caring piece.
It's
They're
really
there
sad.
for the money.
Well, before we started today's podcast, I mentioned to Eric, and I'm hoping our listeners will go to this link because I'm going to put it in the show notes. It's for his blogs. And
Mhm.
I usually go out and look at his blogs, and I don't always read them all the way through because I'm always on to something else. But
And
one
some of them
blog,
are long.
yes, but this one blog really hit me this morning, and it's just the title in it. So I want people to understand, because we touched on it. It's about making yourself proud, happy, and grateful. And I used to think that meant I had to make a lot of money. I had to be important. I had to have thousands of friends. And because I didn't have all that, I kept thinking, well, what am I proud of? I'm really not happy. Okay, maybe I'm grateful for what I have, but I wish I had more. But I don't know if it's age or if it's working in the podcast world, trying to understand we all want the same things in life. And, trying to put it on a scale and saying, I have more than you, doesn't make any difference to me anymore. It's if I feel wealthy at the end of the day, I've had a good day.
I think if you allow yourself to learn from each situation, that leads you in that direction. And I really feel that that is a gift of aging. It's a gift of going through traumatic experiences, good, bad. It teaches you if you allow it. There are many people who don't. Oh, poor me. Oh my God, this happens to me. Oh, my life sucks. Oh, I have to go through this every day. But if you really allow it to teach you something, to move you forward, you benefit from that, and you are more grateful with looking at what you have in life. It's not about the money. I mean, we all need money. That's just a fact of life. We all need it. We have to buy things. We have to buy food. We have to do those things. It's not just about the money. It's about that satisfaction at the end of the day.
Right.
Am I satisfied with what I did today? Did I give it my all? Did I do the best I could do? And if I can go home, even if I'm exhausted, which many days I am, and many days I've been stressed from something that happened, but at the end of the day, if I know that I did my best, and then I learned maybe something from what happened, so I won't repeat it tomorrow, or I can fix it tomorrow, I've had a good day.
Absolutely.
And I'm still here, and I woke up today.
Well, Eric, I'm so glad you joined us.
Thank you. It was a total pleasure. I just want to say one of my favorite movies
Sure.
ever is Groundhog Day. And it basically is exactly what you were just describing. For people who haven't seen it, definitely go see it. And if you have seen it, go watch it again. It gets better every time.
Again and again and again.
Again and again and again. And it can take a long time to learn some of these lessons.
But he kept learning till he got what he was really looking for in life. My other favorite is Bucket List.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because the bucket list allows you to look at the things you have done in your life and what is it that you still seek and how do you get that? And it doesn't mean you have to take that safari or go to China. It just means something in that list that resonates with you that makes you feel complete.
I love it.
And if you can have Morgan Freeman or Jack Nicholson as a partner in
Morgan Freeman's
all the better.
God. I only call him God. Well, we have to have you back on because we've gone in almost an hour already. The time really flew by.
Yeah,
so
it'd be my pleasure.
I would love to have you back on. So Karen, you're going to put in the comments how people can take a look at his work.
How they can find him, and they can follow the podcast that Eric and I do once a month. And I'll tell you, it's the easiest podcast for me because I just sit back and I listen to Eric's stories, which is wonderful because I learn so much. And one last statement, there's the three of us out here. Eric, you said you're about to be 50. Okay. Mm-hmm. Melinda, is it okay if I say where you are?
Sure. Sure.
She's close to 60. I'm 72.
Wow.
And yet I see how much in common all three of us have. We all grew up differently. We all have different cultures. Now is the time for us to look at each other and say, hey, anybody can be happy, but you've got to work at it. It's not going to be given to you. And, there were days that I told you this, Eric, people would ask me, what is my favorite food? What is my favorite movie? And I'd look at them and go, I have no idea. And that's because I wasn't trying to find the happiness. Now I can tell you what those things are.
Indian
And
food?
the difference.
I'm
Is
going
it,
to
is
throw
it
in
Indian
there.
food?
Eat, Pray, Love. Have you watched that movie? Read
Oh,
the book?
absolutely. Yes.
When I need to reevaluate something, I put that movie on, because that's what she does through the whole process and finds the gift in each piece of her life. The gift from the past, which was painful, and she had to relive it and go through it. But that truly does have a gift in it. You just have to find it. You know, the story about finding the pony with all the you know what in the room? That same idea.
Well, we'll have you back, Eric. In the meantime,
Absolutely.
Thank you both so much. It was my
oh,
pleasure.
Thank you.
My
And
pleasure.
Melinda, I think it's time for you to go home.
Well, I will work at that.
Okay. Have a great day,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye.